This time, the mayor will call to order the special city council meeting and workshop for October 12th, 2021 in the council chambers at City Hall, 201 East Nash Street, Terrell, Texas. This time, Grady, would you lead us in invocation? Please turn your mic on.
Yes, Mayor. May we bow our heads, please? Oh, Father God, we come once again giving you thanks for allowing us to meet once again. We ask in this meeting that you would give us insight, guidance, and wisdom. We thank you for caring for Terrell. We thank you for keeping us in all the tragedies and losses. We ask that you would continue to keep us safe and protect us and guide us and help us as leaders to do what is right for the people that we're leading. And God, we pray for those who have had great losses throughout our city, who have lost family members to COVID. We pray for those who are sick with COVID and they're so desperate they need your intervention and help right now, God. In all in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
All right. Our next item on the agenda is mayor, council, community recognition and events. Do we have anyone that has any recognitions? I'll have some later on at the 7 o'clock meeting. Hearing none, at this time we'll hear remarks from visitors. Don, do we have any? We have none. So we'll move forward to item number 6.1, discuss Brushy Creek water system analysis. This is our city engineer, Steve Rogers.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. We have before you tonight a PowerPoint presentation. It is a summary of a report that we asked to Teresa Nichols to prepare on our behalf. I have a copy of the 60-page plus report in my hands here, and we are looking at it here, and we're going to talk about it by map and by development in detail here in just a minute, so you kind of get an idea of the area that we're talking about here. So I'm going to ask Melissa Brunger if she would come up and join me here. Melissa is a associate with Teresa Nichols, and she is in the water and wastewater planning group, and she's very familiar with Terrell and our water system, and she's done a lot of different projects for us over the years. Sorry. Do I start all over and do all that?
No, you're good, Steve.
Good.
Just pick up where you are.
Okay, here we are. Okay. So I've got Melissa here. She's going to walk you through this PowerPoint presentation you have in your packet. It's an executive summary of this report. And I need to give John Godwin some credit as much as I can for him helping kind of put a lot of this together on the front end, which is some of the hard work, and that's kind of chasing all the rabbits and kittens to get the baseline information that's used to develop the results of the report. So I want to thank John for that, for chasing all those down. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Melissa and let her walk you through this PowerPoint presentation.
Melissa, welcome to the city of Terrell.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me, Mayor and Council. All right, so as Steve mentioned, as part of the study, we looked at some various developments north and west of the city of Terrell that Terrell could potentially serve on the water side. I know this map has a lot going on. It's like echoing or something.
Hey, pull it down towards you and then out, away from you. Down and away. We're good.
Oh, we're good.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not?
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, we're good. Okay. So this map has a lot going on. Kind of on the southeast side of the map, there you'll see kind of this yellow shading and all these black lines. That's the city of Terrell's existing
Melissa,
water
I'm
system.
sorry, I'm getting feedback on there. Okay, hold on. Bear with us for just a second. We don't want to miss anything you say, right, Kent? Right, Mayor Ronnie?
I think this stuff's pretty interesting. Goose 1, or is,
Wireless Goose 1.
Good?
Testing, hello, test. You good? Okay, let's try that now.
Okay.
okay, just stop me if it still sounds bad. Oh, it's,
You're all right.
So your existing water system is shown on the southeast part of this map. So the city has a delivery point from the North Texas Municipal Water District on the west side of the town, and that's where all the water comes into the city, where it says NTMWD delivery point. Read that on the west side. So that's your existing system. So everything is a decent amount north and west of where you currently are. And John, as Steve mentioned, did a really great job of identifying these potential developments and then also looking at number of units and phasing of those. So the next step was really to look at each of those developments in more detail and how many units or homes could be served, as well as phasing. You know, what's short term in the next 5 years versus, 10 or 20 years. And so we looked at all of this and then turned those units into demand needs. So for each of those people, we have gallons per person that would be needed to be served. And so we calculate water demands for average day, like a maximum day or a summer day, and then peak hour, which is the very highest demand during summer. So there's lots of numbers in this table. I'm definitely not going to go through all of them. But really, I think what's most important is what's on the bottom row in green, and that's the overall system total. So we're looking at up to 20,000 units or homes to be served in this area, which is a lot of homes. That's roughly 60,000 people. And so it's a very large amount of water usage. Big opportunity for the city of Terrell. One thing I did want to point out is that short term, there's a fairly high amount of units for McClendon Chisholm, and those are actual units that are in the ground today that Terrell could potentially take over water service for. So that's why they have some higher units short term. And the rest of them, I believe all those developments are more on the growth side and new units as opposed to existing. Sure.
On this map here, I just want to make sure everybody's orientated. And again, Melissa's telling you that in the bottom right-hand side of the map is the city of Terrell system, and that's our water distribution system. That's all the black lines there. And then as you leave out to the northwest of Terrell, you have the pink color is Rio. It's also known as High Point Ranch, and it's had some other names. That's the development out there on the west side of town on US 80. And then the green is Beans Creek, and that's some local landowners. And then the one next to it is Samuels, and that's a local family as well. And then you have the red one is Man Ranch, which is a special law district that was created a few years ago, and that's on FM 548 is where that's located. And then the yellow above that is the town of McClendon Chisholm. And so McClendon Chisholm has asked the city of Terrell what it would cost for Terrell to serve them water. And so that's part of the driving force behind this. And these other large acreage developments are either needing water or will need water as we go through there. And we're trying to show that the C property, which is kind of the turquoise color, is a large tract right out there by that airport on State Highway 205, where that little airport is. It's right beside it. And then the blue is the Moore Family Ranch, which is another special law district created by them a few years ago to set themselves up for success in development and growth. So we're looking at those areas, or what's on that table. So if you'll go to the table on the next page again. So if you'll notice, the Samuels property, Beans Creek, and High Point Ranch are there at the top. And those are ones that are either partially in the city limits or at the city limits in our ETJ, and then the ones below that are outside of our ETJ now and our city limits. And so I've identified all those McLendon Chisholm. There's some areas around McLendon Chisholm, the C property and the Man Ranch are all identified there on the left side of the page. And she's got the number of units in each of those. And so this totals over 20,000 units to serve. In our current count of units, we would, in Terrell right now, are about 8,000. Yeah, we're right at 8,000 right now. So this would triple, almost triple the size of what we're serving right now to get an idea of the breadth and scope of this when it's fully developed over time. So I kind of wanted to make sure y'all were orientated. Do y'all have any questions at this point related to map and lay of the land and all that?
No, but I'm familiar with, I've seen these
I wanna
maps
make
before.
sure Grady and
Are y'all good?
as well.
This is all potential new customers, not,
Yes, I'm good, Mayor.
That's great.
Right.
You good, Grady?
okay.
Okay, Mayor Ronnie, are you good? Do you have any questions?
Yes, I'm good.
What is the difference between a peak and maximum? Is peak summer?
Okay, now I'm gonna turn it over.
Maximum day would be the highest day in the summer, and then peak hour would be kind of the peak hour within that maximum day. So just like your highest kind of, not instantaneous, but like a solid hour of high water usage. And so whenever we're looking at sizing of infrastructure, we want to make sure that you can serve even that, summer day and the highest demands within that summer day. And so that's why we look at this peak hour and maximum day. So those are in dry, hot summer, what kind of demands you could see.
Those are, we're designing this like we design our system. So this is not like you would do a rural system. This is designed like a normal city would develop. So it makes your infrastructure right-sized, and it makes it larger, and therefore it makes it cost more. But but it makes it right so that this system will operate like ours does, so we don't run out of water when we have a problem. It's right side the tanks and the pumping and everything's right size to meet our design, the City of Terrell's design standards. And so you got to base the peak hours, what really gets you everything, a little larger than you would normally build if you were just trying to meet a max day.
So for us, if it was a worst case, everybody needed water, the water's there, fire, everybody,
Everybody's
yeah.
using water, you got a fire
Yep.
going on, this allows you to serve all that.
You may notice that the difference between max day and peak hour is higher at the retail than the wholesale, and that's because the wholesale will have storage and other infrastructure to be able to peak from. Whereas retail, like Steve mentioned, is either in the city limits or in the ETJ, and we're assuming those will be direct customers. Like every house will be a direct customer of City of Terrell. So after we looked at what kind of water needs there are for all those developments, then we started looking at water system infrastructure. So what kind of infrastructure would be needed to be able to convey water to these developments? So the first step of that is to look at a pump station. And the purpose of a pump station is to pump water from the North Texas Municipal Water District, your wholesale provider, up to the north and west. And so this kind of dashed purple line on this map is their North Texas transmission line. So it kind of comes right by Terrell. And your current pump station and ground storage tank is supplied by that 42-inch that's in that purple dashed line as well. And so right now they're requiring all cities to put their pump station essentially right on their pipeline. And so we looked at the quarter of the pipeline, we looked at elevations, we want to make sure it wasn't, in a floodplain just from an engineering standpoint. We don't want it to be in too low of an elevation. Looks for vacant land. You'll see lots of random lines, not random, but lots of lines on this map. That's your thoroughfare. And so we wanted to, look at that and make sure that we have a good potential site. And so that location in the red square is where we identified for the proposed pump station site based on looking at all this information and discussions with City of Terrell. We had about 6 sites that we initially looked at, so we pared it down to 1 proposed site. And then the next side is to look at pipelines. So how do we get the water from that pump station, that supply point, to these individual delivery points? And so we used a modeling software to add those demands and then size pipelines to convey the water from the pump station to each delivery point. So you can see those little red boxes that represents for each wholesale customer where you would potentially drop off the water, and then also sizing of the water lines needed to move the water through the system. I did want to note you'll see some alternate sizing, and so based on our discussions, we were thinking, a 30-inch is a very large pipeline. There could be some water quality issues initially if we put in a large line like that, and so we looked at also doing 2 lines of paralleling, so you could initially save a little bit of money, build the infrastructure, and then go back and parallel it if demands do get higher in order to keep good water quality in addition to meet capacity needs. So we did cost out both ways. It's a little bit cheaper to build the larger up front, but I think the phasing just gives you a little bit of flexibility. Like if demands don't get as high as we think they're going to be, then you may be able to have a 24-inch only and not never need to build that parallel line. So there are benefits to both paralleling as well as just building the largest up front. And you'll see this is one preferred option. We looked at lots of different options. So I think we evaluated anything we could possibly evaluate in terms of water supply for this. We had, I think, like 8 different alternatives. So this is the preferred one that we ended up with in the end. And then we developed cost estimates for all the alternatives. And then in this table on this screen, you can see that we actually looked at how much water is needed for each development and then kind of proportion that cost, a cost of infrastructure to each development. So we looked at each pipeline and said, okay, this development needs 10% of the pipeline and allocated 10% of the cost to it. So we looked at all the infrastructure and also did that. So you can see kind of how it plays out with each development. And then the city of Terrell, which we're assuming would be the developments in the ETJ and city limits.
So Melissa, is there a specific phasing that would occur, maybe starting closer to the pump station and moving out, and kind of what timeline would be recommended?
So we would have demand triggers. So if you can see, there are 2 ground storage tanks, one that's 2 million gallons and one that's 3 million gallons. So we're recommending building a 3 up front, and then once you hit a specific demand trigger, then you would need the second ground storage tank. And then the same thing with the pipeline, the main corridor, the 30-inch that goes through. You could build that up front, or you could build a 24-inch, and then there would be a demand trigger. Once demands pick up to a certain level, then you would build the parallel line. The same thing with pumping. We have stacked graph of how you would increase the pumping over time, so you don't have to build it all up front. So this total project cost of $61 million, that is everything through build out. That's not your upfront cost. That would be everything you need to be able to serve ultimate. We saw like 20-something thousand units, population of over 60,000 people. This is everything.
So the alternate sizing would save what, dollar-wise?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Ballpark. Can you do, Steve, would you happen to know? I'm just, what I'm curious is.
I'm going to actually provide the answer to that question. What you're going to hear from staff at the end of this presentation is this is a big overview study.
Right.
In order to really implement this thing, the question you just asked and about 30 other questions need to be answered in basically a phase 2 study. They're going to be questions we have, each of the partners have. They're going to be detail oriented. We're going to come along at the end and say, let's take the next step in this study.
I'll go out on a limb here and tell you that, if you did this in a phased approach, you would spend more of the $62 million in phase 1 than you would in phase 2, because you got to build the pump station, the receiving point, the ground storage, and all that. So it's not exactly a $31 million split, phase 1, phase 2. Does that kind of give you a better idea of what you're asking?
Yeah, dollar-wise, if we do 2 phases, the majority of the money is going to be spent in phase.
It's not the majority, but you'll spend more in phase 1 than phase 2, but we're not at a point where we're ready to tell you what that is. I mean, I could tell you it's 40 million and 25 million or 20-something million, but I don't know that right now, and that's not really what we're tasked with, but that's one of the things we're going to look at in detail when we get to the next phase of this, because McLennan Chisholm's made some progress on their end, and there's a development up there that's, it's not on this map here, but we've got to include in there, it's Huffines. And so Huffines has a development that's in McLennan Chisholm's ETJ, and they're ready to go, and they're ready to spend money. So if we can get, if you look at these dollar amounts on the bottom of this page, if we can get some or most of those people to put money in the front end and get this thing going, and we've got, and we're trying to put that together right now. You notice the largest one is McLennan Chisholm.
On the project cost, I don't see Huffines included in that.
They're in the McLennan Chisholm.
Oh, that's part of the McLennan.
I'm just
Okay.
telling you, they
All
have money and they're ready
Okay.
to go
All
is
right.
all I'm trying to.
That clears up a
trying to
lot for
make
me.
you. So I'm not trying to tell you how many million or
No,
what
that's
eight-figure
all right.
number they're putting in right now. That's part of the next step
Okay.
of sausage
Got it.
making here.
All right.
Okay, so, all right, I'm gonna end this with this slide here, and this is, I'm gonna walk through these points here so that you can, and Councilman, I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem, do you have any questions at this point? Okay, good, okay, so to end this presentation, I wanna go through these points here so you know, in addition to what we're looking at here, some things that we have upcoming related to our water system. So if you'll remember, one of our projects in our Water Development Board borrow is an replace the Poetry elevated storage tank. And we have that coming up soon when we can get a couple more projects out of the gate here. And probably sometime next year, we'll borrow that money and start that project. We have a $4 million, and that's covered up by the box there, but we have a $4 million improvement that needs to be done at our existing pump station that was built in 2005 and 6. And that's okay, Dawn. It's a $4 million ground storage tank that needs to be added. And that has two purposes. We need that because we're getting more demand on our system. Number two, we're gonna need that because if we amend our contract with North Texas Municipal Water District, which is gonna happen in an imminent fashion, it appears, then we're gonna have to have that tank in place to meet our new contract. And so that's another project we have on the immediate radar for us. The Kaufman County Water Control Improvement District number 1, which is also the Hines development, or Rio, as we talked about. Those numbers, that was shown on the map, but that's not included in the numbers because we're gonna serve that from our existing system. And that's a $4 million improvement that's gonna be needed in order to serve them. And that's what that project is right there. So in addition to what you've seen, we have a $4.15 million elevated storage tank. We have $4 million ground storage tank. We have a $4 million, probably 16-inch water line along US 80 to serve Rio or the High Point Ranch, whatever we want to call it. And then we have some other challenges that are going to hit us out on the south of Spur 557 and south of Interstate 20, and that's the Terrell 1132, which is part of the Las Lomas mud, and Las Lomas themselves. They're both looking to develop in some industrial components, and TEDC's involved in this. The timing we're still a little unclear on, but we're talking about minimum 20-inch water lines, possibly leaving the pump station, going all the way out to serve Las Lomas south of Spur 557 at Las Lomas Parkway, south of the Walmart DC, and then the 1,132 acres, which is off FM 148 south of I-20. So we have a lot of other water projects that are coming to us in addition to this other here that we want to make you aware of now. And some of these we've already started programming into what we're doing. And some of these we're still working on, and we don't have everything defined right now or programmed into any current borrowing or in our current UCR. Some of these projects are not right now to either design or build. And so we've got a lot of pressure, development pressure coming up on us, and that's a good thing, but it's also something we have to be cognizant of as we go forward. So, Mike, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, thank you, Steve, and thank you, Melissa. I think you guys did a great job. And again, I'll mention appreciation to John Godwin for helping to make sure I'll use Steve's phrase, all of the cats who were necessary to be herded on this project all got herded along correctly. John Godwin is your cat herder. And then anyhow, we appreciate that. And like I said, I think as we talk with our partners about this, the next thing you're going to see from us is here's a recommendation on essentially a phase 2 study with the next layer of detail to make these things happen. We need to make sure we know who's really willing to discuss with us and move forward with us. We get a lot of positive reactions, but you got to start figuring out who will write checks.
Yeah, no. So, go ahead.
Just wonder if there's any questions to answer. Melissa's still here. I'll be happy to have her answer any questions, or John, if y'all want to make him get up here and talk, that's fine too.
So-
But any questions y'all have for us?
Yeah, no, so as we move forward with growth in and around our municipality, our city, you can see that there's a lot of costs, a lot of work to be done, engineering studies, as we move forward with how we're going to address these developments. We need to be mindful of that as we move forward throughout the years ahead. Does anybody have any comments or questions for Steve and/or Melissa? Nope. Hearing none, good presentation, thank you. Our next item on the agenda, discuss award of construction contract for the North Alley improvements. This is Mike McKeska. Melissa, thank you for coming. Thanks, Steve.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. This item, been a long time coming. We've been working with Atmos, Encore, and some other cable folks to see what kind of potential improvements would be going along in the North Alley. And currently, Atmos is out there on site. They've been working for the last few weeks. Good. And so we kind of intentionally held off on this bid for this project that Hayter was doing the design work on, and is primarily funded through the Water Development Board until Atmos could get started on construction. And so they're in progress. We have an award recommendation from Hayter. We did have 3 bids. 3 bids were received on September 9th, and the apparent low bidder was Labanda. Not sure that's going to help. Was Labanda, and they have done other projects for us. Is this any better? Is it any better? That's not fair. Okay. We'll discuss it briefly. I do have to admit there's a couple of errors in here that it's not my tablet. Any better? Is it working? Not working? Is it on?
Tim can hear you. That's all you need.
You can hear me?
I think it's better.
Okay, good.
I think
deal.
it's better.
It's not echoing or ringing in here. Okay, so on page 11 on the agenda package, there's a letter of recommendation from Hayter. They reviewed the 3 bids that we received. They double-checked everything. Again, the low bidder was Labanda. They've done work for us. They've also done work on other TWDB projects. They're wrapping up one right now in a city just east of here. And so The recommendation coming from our engineer is to award to Hayter. They attached also a notice of award letter, and somehow, one of the errors I have in there, somehow that got copied 3 times. There was supposed to be a sample contract, form contract that was in there, and I'm not sure what happened. I will get that corrected by next week. And in addition, so this is funded through the Water Development Board. Again, this is going to be replacing water and sewer and paving from North Delphine all the way to Rockwall along the North Alley. Again, Atmos is getting probably about halfway done by the time we get TWDB review on the project for DBE participation, all their forms. We think Atmos is going to be basically getting very close to being done, especially on the east end where we're going to start work. So we're trying to sequence all of this, keep it moving. One of the things that, just to note, and I'll have this updated and corrected again with the contract. Most of this, the low bid for the TWDB portion was $1.659 million. Is in line with the engineer's estimate and the funding recommended, so we have sufficient funds through the TWDB loans. We also added some side alley paving work that is actually being funded separately. I will add that into the background information. I did not do that, but it's noted on Hayter's recommendation. We'll talk about that funding source next week when I update that. But that is, we had some funds left over from the Griffith and Rose Hill CO. So we're going to use that to update some paving and some alleys adjacent to the north alley as everything connects. But we're looking forward to looking forward to getting going on the construction and get this done. The project will be about 9 to 12 months probably once they get started, which will take a couple of months from now. It's actually 1.8. The TWDB funded portion is 1.59 million, and then there's about $250,000 in some other paving improvements that would be funded separately. And again, I'll update that in the background. Total project is 1.8. I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me. Yes, yes. So if there's any questions, apologize for the mistakes. Yes, sir. Okay.
Terrell, Crossroads, Northwest Public Improvement District number 5, Mr. Sands.
So, Mayor and Council, we have 4 existing public improvement districts, and as you recall, we create all of those by petition from the landowners. And we've got a draft of a petition that we feel will be coming to us soon from the owners out in the Crossroads area and from the apartment complex soon to be constructed on the west side of that zone. That's the Ventures second phase. So the existing public improvement districts in that area are around Buc-ee's and around the Fairfield Marriott. There's a Market Center Public Improvement District. That's our number 1 PID. Then Crossroads has a existing public improvement district covering essentially what is already the developed land out in that area. That public improvement district pays for primarily maintenance of the drainage facility that's on the south side next to Interstate 20. So that's the one that is on the south side of American Way, directly fronting Sage Hill and directly fronting the Interstate 20 future frontage road down there. So this is a new one. This new one is Public Improvement District number 5 for us, and it covers, like I said, 119 acres. There's a draft of the petition in there, and it's on agenda item page 20. It's contemplated to have a just under 4-cent annual assessment. That means each of the landowners would be signing up to pay for an extra 4 cents of property taxes every year, and then we would use that to maintain the larger of those lakes out there and make sure that it is well maintained into the future. As you know, we've been working on a handful of different public-private partnerships to get some amenities built around that lake, and this is a phase of making sure that we'll have adequate funding to take care of the things that are built around the lake. There's a chart embedded in all of this. I won't go over it with you, but you can see in there the amount of money that we would anticipate the actual annual costs would be. The city would put in 10% of those costs, and then and that's an annual stormwater contribution from our side. And remember, we'll kickstart the Public Improvement District with its first year of expenses. So all of that is embedded in here, and it all works then as a reimbursement. We actually tally up how much money we spend taking care of the wetlands and on the drainage basin out there. And it really allows the developer to walk away, not have to have a long-term in perpetuality maintenance of it. You've got Glenn Caldwell gets contractor does the right thing out there, and we have high-quality maintenance over a lengthy period of time. It's kind of a crisp and clean project for us. So if you go through there, you'll find on agenda item page 27 a fairly lengthy recitation of everything that's under the maintenance program. And again, I won't go over all of that, but it's everything from stocking fish to mowing the grass and weed eating and making sure that there are lights out there and making sure that we do repairs and regular annual maintenance with that project. If you flip through a couple of pages there, you can see a map that identifies the land area, and you can see a map that identifies the red zone around the edge of it. So essentially, in the long term, this will not include the 2 auto dealerships because they don't put water into that lake, and it won't include the very northwesternmost section because its water goes elsewhere as well, and it will include basically 2 primary pieces of land. Any piece of land that uses the second lake for drainage, and any piece of land that fronts on the wetlands. Those are the ones that have special drainage needs that are above and beyond normal drainage needs, and that's what gives us the legal authority to put that into a public improvement district. So Mayor and Council, it's not ready for action at this time, but what you'll see is that Greg and Mary Gail will receive this in. We'll get it lined out with our city secretary. There'll be a date that we set for a public hearing. It'll be in the newspaper once, and as we go through all of those steps in the process, we'll then actually form the Public Improvement District. And as you know, that process all ends up with contracts with the county for the county to do the tax collection on behalf of the Public Improvement District. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about that project.
I know, as we move forward with these developments, we gotta have a mechanism in place to where the city's not having to pay for all of the maintenance associated with keeping these properties in good condition. And so the PIDs offer us that mechanism. I think it's a great way to do your business, and we'll look forward to moving forward with it. Does anyone have any questions, comments? Hearing none, our next item on the agenda, discuss petition for the creation of, no, it's not. It's discuss Venture Phase 2 Development Agreement. This is Mr. Sims.
So on the Venture Phase 2 Development Agreement, the easiest thing to do is to compare it to the Venture Phase 1. So the Phase 1 apartment complex, we worked with them. That's the one that's Magnolia Grove that's out there right now. We worked with them with their development fees to make sure that we were collecting a chunk of development fees. We were saving those and matching those with a Texas Parks and Wildlife grant. Glenn's actually here tonight to talk to you about that Texas Parks and Wildlife grant and how we're doing on moving through that process. The next thing that we're doing on Venture Phase 2 is we're using, again, development fees paid for by Venture Phase 2. We will collect a check from Venture Phase 2 when they build their apartment complex, and then we'll divvy that out into a couple of different things. One will be some of the the lake improvements. We have a separate deal that I'm going to brief you about next, where our developer of that area is putting a dock and quite a number of other amenities around the lake. And then the apartment complex itself will put some amenities out by their edge, by the top, the northeast side of the lake, and they'll make a really nice entry area there. Mayor and I actually met a vendor who's going to participate with us because you actually have an opportunity to do a small-scale splash pad fountain on part of what the apartment complex is going to be donating to the city. So to walk through the development agreement in more detail, page 31 is where that starts. It talks about the SUP that City Council approved back in July. They've got to build everything in accordance with that. Of course, that's a natural requirement. You flip over to the next page. That's agenda item page 32. You see that they'll pay us $804,000, a little bit over $800,000, and we'll put that into a fund that absolves them of any of their other requirements. They've got a period of time to build that. They have to request their building permits by June 1, 2022, complete their construction by December 31st, 2024. They obviously wanted a little bit of time for things to go poorly. I don't blame them for that. You never can make predictions there. If you flip over to the next page after that, you see what we'll do is after they construct a few things, which I'll show you here in just a moment, we will reimburse them $200,000 out of that. And as we've talked about before, we have the other deal with the developer who would be reimbursed $400,000 out of that $800,000. And then we would want to spend, as you would anticipate, the remaining amount of money that comes in under that $804,000 going to be spent on the engineering costs associated with the Texas Parks and Wildlife grant and some of the associated costs in that area to really pull all of this off. So if you go a few more pages back through the back on this draft development agreement, you can see that there's a spot in your packet that I hope renders out correctly. It doesn't actually look very good in my paper copy, but it's agenda item page 41, and you can see the graphic there on what the apartment complex has in mind. On the bottom of that page is blue. That's where the actual lake is. And you can see a edge along the lake that will get a lot of good landscaping features and a 10-foot wide trail along that section of the park. And you can see kind of a leave-out area, which is kind of shown as clear. That's where those apartment complex units are, because remember, they're putting 4-story apartment complex just overlooking the lake. We think that'll be a beautiful and dramatic location. The developer's hoping to get some really good lease rates off of that. So they're going to be building a very nice improvement up along that edge. And right where the apartment complex will have a gate for their patrons to, or for their residents to enter and exit, that's where we'll be working on a very, I don't want to make it overly elaborate. I want to keep expectations down, but a ground level fountain element that will have some colored lights in it and actually spray into the lake at that location. So small scale, kids to play with, but a nice thing so that when you're on the dock on the far side of the lake, you'll be able to see some lights over on the other side. You'll be able to see something fun happening on the other side. And we'll actually run water through that on a regular basis. And the Public Improvement District will pay for the maintenance of those fountains, so that's a good thing. All of this obviously designed to work together. So the very last page in this particular agenda item shows you, this is agenda item page 42. It's actually going to take them about $370,000 to build all of the stuff they're going to build along that edge. And so good deal for us. We're again, I won't call this finished. A couple more negotiations to be done on this thing. But we're hoping they'll spend something around $370,000, and then we will only be reimbursing them about $200,000 of their impact fee payments in order to accomplish this goal. And you can see some of the work there, retaining wall, some landscaping, some trees, the 10-foot multi-use concrete path, and then a couple of other little items to make sure that we've got a good, safe environment out in that area. So any questions about that? Happy to answer any of those questions.
I like the idea of getting the developer involved and trying to accomplish some of these things, so good job. Anybody have any comments, questions?
Mr. Sims, I have a question on, if I'm on page 42 of the packet, I'm looking at the itemized list. There is a line item for pedestrian lights at $400 each. I only bring that up because I've never known of any light structure that is so low cost. So what kind of lighting system is that? Is that a solar 3
I
foot
think
level
they've
light?
got
Is that
a
6
small
foot
scale
level light?
solar, yeah, when they say pedestrian lighting, they're not talking about a lot of bells and whistles here. So that's like a 3 foot high solar standalone installation, so.
Okay, so one of my questions, and this can be sidebarred later, but is how much, which I like the 3 foot units and I like the solar units. My question is going to be how much light spray does it put off, and is that adequate for the area? So that's I'm going to come back to you later this week and
I
ask
would
that
say,
additional.
we actually have talked about that question. Just go ahead and get that answered. I would tell you that the apartments themselves will have lights on them. And so remember, this is really only about 20 feet away from each individual apartment unit. And so there's going to be a pretty healthy amount of light on this edge. You've got to have an existing apartment complex. And so we're not going to be shining spotlights off of the apartment complex, but you got a 4-story building with some lights on it that will help out lighting in this zone.
I think that's a good answer and alleviated the concern.
Sorry?
He's
Good?
Yeah.
All right, anyone else? All right, our next item on the agenda, discuss Crossroads Area Amenities Reimbursement Program or Agreement, and that's going to be Mr. Sims.
So this is the last of this set of puzzle pieces with the developer side of it. Glenn's going to bring the grant side of it forward soon. This puzzle piece is about what the owner or the original owner of the land, George and Justin Allen, what they're going to be doing. And some of this actually, to tell you, has already been completed. So they're doing about $400,000 worth of work. They're doing the dock, they're doing the fountain, they're doing some the trail on the other side of the lake that hooks in with this one. And so they're making sure that I guess I'll call that the southwest side of the lake is properly landscaped. A little bit more smaller scale treatment. I've noticed that some folks have already found that there's a sidewalk out there. And so this is really just making good on an item we've talked about in executive session a few times, where we wanted to bring forward a formal agreement with our developer for them to do this work. And then this provides, again, it does not reimburse the developer until we receive that $804,000 from the apartment complex. But when we receive the check from the apartment complex and they finish their work, including the installation of the fountain in the middle of the lake and the dock, then we cut them the check and to up to $400,000. And I'll tell you that that's kind of something I'm looking forward to, because I think it'll be a nice amenity for the city. Some of us already go out in that area, and I can tell you I'm kind of longing to have Glenn give us the report on the park, because it'd be nice to be able to walk from the Film Alley parking lot across a pedestrian bridge and into a park, and then go for a walk around this lake. So that's going to be a nice long-term vision for us. But anyhow, we will bring all three of these items back to you for voting on a future city council agenda. We are still working on our developers and with legal on it, so if you see a little tweak or an adjustment in one of these documents next time around, don't be surprised, but we are trying to land the airplane on these package of improvements.
Looking forward to getting done. Next item on the agenda is discuss consultant selection process for implementing the Crossroads Park, Texas Parks and Wildlife Grant Project. Mr. Sims?
I'll be passing this one over to Glenn Caldwell, because he's got a spiffy little presentation on it and has been working very hard to make this happen.
Mr. Mayor, Council, Ms. Dawn is preparing to get the presentation started. This is one of those items we came to you back in December of 2020 and asked Council allows us to apply for a Texas Parks and Wildlife grant, which is around the time period of, again, in December. Obviously, we're focused on delivering a 2,200 linear feet linear park, approximately 200 feet see in the lower right-hand corner of the slide that I'm on now, there's a 50-50 match, 750 grant, 750 local match, total construction, $1.5 million. The construction elements, obviously, some of these could change with procuring a consultant through the RFQ process, but we're looking at a native and adaptive landscaping, multi-use trails, solar lighting, which Mayor Pro Tem, I think our solar lighting will probably be a little more expensive, so it won't be at the rate of $450, that's for sure. Playground features, a plaza, a pavilion, water feature, site amenities, and signage will be included. As you can see, the cross, yes, ma'am.
When we submitted the request to Texas Wildlife Park, did we specify how wide the trails were expected to be? Do we have some flexibility in how wide those trails are going to be?
We're anticipating the width of the sidewalks to be anywhere from 8 to 10 feet wide. So they're extremely wide, plenty of walkability, pedestrians won't, you know, if you have a stroller, what have you, you can still pass one another comfortably, and as well as a bike, someone's on a bike.
Thank you.
We also included a map. I believe it may have been in some of the other presentations you may have seen early on. The lake that Mr. Sims spoke of with the walking trail that connects to the linear park. The linear park runs, and it will be running north and to south, or north and south. So that's a pretty neat deal. That's always pretty cool. And obviously, everyone in the area will be able to take advantage of this great opportunity. I want to make sure we be clear. The next slide, let's see, did I include it? Yes, I did. This is just a site map. It doesn't define anything related to what we may or may not receive from our consultant. That's why we're bringing in the consultant to identify and bring to life what your goals and dreams and aspirations are, as well as the community. We'll deliver it to the people. Are there any questions related to any of these maps? Okay, we'll move on to the next slide. So the most critical part of this is next steps. We're planning to advertise and post the RFQ October the 13th, which is tomorrow. We'll run it through from the 16th through the 23rd. Our deadline is October the 25th at 10 a.m. We will be assembling a selection panel to review the RFQs, which we'll make that determination here in the next couple of days. We'll complete the evaluation around the time frame of October 26th through the 28th. We'll make the selection of the consultant. October 29th is our goal. And our hopefulness is to negotiate an agreement, or at least receive an agreement that we can come to council and receive council's recommendation. And I'll open up for any questions.
Just real quickly, let me go back and emphasize 2 points here. If Dawn or you could maybe go back to the map of the area. So we've got the smaller lake that is fronting on I-20, and then this larger lake is the one that we're interested in with our developer partnerships. Then the green kind of square, I like to think of this as the end of a golf club. So the end little square down there at the bottom is the 1.6 acres that is the actual park that we actually have the grant for. So the grant money was only for what's green on this map, and that's why that other visual that we have in there, the next slide, is, that looks like it's for a much more limited area, right? That's what the Texas Parks and Wildlife Grant covers. And the reason we're doing these developer partnerships is Texas Parks and Wildlife wasn't going to cover the whole thing, and they weren't going to cover the local match, right? So then if you go back to the bigger photo, because we've been working with the families who are interested in the Terrell 5, the 5 young men who were killed in Iraq and Afghanistan since the start of those hostilities, there's been some interest in, well, what could we name after that group? And there's a lot of different ideas that have been kicked around for that. It works out to be very difficult, right, to name things after 5 different people. And then there's been some ideas about, well, what if you name something the Terrell 5? There was talk about naming one of our major roadways after one or more or several of those folks. And we were interested in the idea of communication to the public so they know what it meant and they knew what the history was if they're interested in finding out about that. So one of the ideas we're going to explore with the Parks Board is to talk to them about creating a little bit of an interpretive element around the lake that can be tied in with the park. And that interpretive element would be to explain, well, what is a Gold Star family? What's the history of Gold Star families that actually dates back to a Gold Star mother being something that was established around the time of World War I, and then there were changes and additions to that program that ended up netting it into a Gold Star family. And we want to communicate what that is, tell that history, and then as you imagine some of these walking paths you can go through where, okay, I walk to one station, it gives me an overview. I walk to another station, and it really focuses on the first person who died in Iraq, Afghanistan. I walk another quarter mile down the path, I get another interpretive stop where I can read about the next person who was killed in action, and so on down the line as I circle this entire lake. So I don't want to call that a fully designed idea at this time, but we are going to talk with your Parks Board about naming this Gold Star Lake and possibly name the park also Gold Star Park. Understand Crossroads Park is kind of the easy thing to call it because it's right there at Crossroads. But nevertheless, we did feel like that name Gold Star resonated. It goes in with the American Way theme that's out there. It goes in there with the statue of the eagle that's already out there. And as you know, the auto dealers out there, they're going to be putting in a very large American flag. Because I think Charles Finner is an excellent negotiator and talked to them about doing a good-sized American flag out there. So we're anxious to see kind of what the Park Board's reaction is to that idea, but I did want to take advantage of Glenn's time to present this item to bring that up to council as well and get any feedback from council.
Well, you know, one of the things I want to thank staff on is, you're right, we have been approached by the Gold Star families to recognize the 5 gentlemen who lost their lives during the War on Terror. So this would be a good opportunity if we can make this thing work, and I believe we can. I think the Park Board should support it. But the other thing is, you know, one of the criticisms that we may receive is, why are we spending $750,000 and a new development in the park area? Well, the reason for it is because we get matching funds. So we turn that $750 to $1.4, $1.5 million, and that's why you do it. You take advantage of grant monies and you work within their boundaries to benefit the city of Terrell. So that's a win-win for everybody. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Glenn?
Yes, Glenn, I have some feedback here, and then I have a question at the end. So I asked earlier about the trail and how wide it would be, and you know, my recommendation is that we make that trail as wide as it can be, you know, the 10 feet wide, to allow as many community members that live in the area, that are shopping, that are visiting, to be at a wide enough sidewalk there. You know, we mentioned interpretive signage at the park, and when I think about signage, you know, I think about the explanation of what is in the area. I think about education, and then I also connect that with how welcoming a city is, especially in an area that attracts visitors. And as we're trying to figure out, you know, kind of what is the city of Terrell, what's special about Terrell, welcoming always is at top of mind for what is Terrell and what does the future of Terrell look like. So I'd love to be able to see some additional languages, for example, English, Braille, making sure that those individuals that are coming here see that Terrell is welcoming, whether it's for shopping, living, or playing in the city. My question is, you know, once a contract is negotiated, Would it be a year? Would it be 6 months? Would it be 2 years before the entire project is completed?
We would anticipate at least 2 years.
2 years.
Up to 2 years maximum.
Okay.
There's no reason we shouldn't be able to deliver this within a 2-year time period.
And thank you, is there a way to, I'm thinking, when you do the different phases of the park over the next 2 years, maybe is there a way to focus on specific aspects of the phases of building out the park, whether it's the trail or sitting space, that could still be safe enough for community members to take advantage of, or maybe there's not an opportunity to do that to where it has to be closed off until it's finalized.
Our recommendation would be to close off the park, to let the contractor that's selected go in and go full speed ahead, 100%. Now, if there's a case where we get to the end and there's some minor amenities, obviously we'll offer up a grand opening and let everyone do a photo op and then come back, and you won't even know we've been there for those small amenities that we need to be done.
So punch out list.
Exactly. Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Sure. I do have one more thing with trying to tie it back to the additive signage or features of the park. I think recently we were talking about providing spaces in our community that are for individuals of all abilities. And sometimes those are tactile features that would be on some of the, whether it's the playground or it's the additive signage. So I'd love to be able to see if we could have some of that added in here. And once again, going to the welcoming for all individuals with any ability or disability.
Yes, ma'am. Most definitely, Stephen.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Anyone else? Nope. All right, thank you. Glenn, appreciate it very much. Good presentation. The mayor's going to table item 6.7, discuss monthly financial report, and we are going to move forward and go into executive session. So at this time, we'll adjourn into executive session in accordance with Section 551 of the Texas Government Code to discuss the following: Section 551.072, deliberations regarding real property; Section 551.074, personnel matters; Section 551.087, deliberations regarding economic development negotiations. We are now in executive session. You need a break? Are you good? No, we're gonna eat. It shouldn't take that long. Can we get through executive and then,
We gonna stay in here, Mayor?
yes, yes. Okay.
Still on the air.
We're still on the air. Are we on the air or just on?
This is an official moment of drama while we wait for a transition between
Yes, it
step
is.
1 and step 2.